Mr. Vice President,
Yes.
the President himself has said he wants all the facts out. He gave up such things as even his own diary. Every principal, including Secretary Schultz, he gave up some of it.
Well, Dan, let's be careful here because you're
yes, sir, I want you to be careful, Mr. Vice President, because
I will be careful, but I want to get my side of this out.
The problem here is that you repeatedly said into meetings, you said in a meeting in which Secretary Schultz, in the most forceful way, registered his objections. And then you said you never heard anybody register objections.
If it was the most forceful way, I've heard George Schultz be very, very forceful. And if I were there and he was very, very forceful at that meeting, I would have remembered that. I don't remember that.
Then how do you explain that you can't remember it and the other people at the meeting say he was apoplectic?
I wasn't there at that point.
You weren't in the meeting?
I'm not suggesting. I'm just saying I don't remember it.
I don't want to be argumentative, Mr. Vice President.
You do, Dan.
No,
this is not a great night because I want to talk about why I want to be president, why those 41% of the people are supporting me.
And Mr. Vice President, these questions are
judge a whole career. It's not fair to judge my whole career by a rehash on Iran. How would you like it if I judged your career by those 7 minutes when you walked off the set in New York?
Well,
now, would you like that?
Mr.
I
Vice
have
President,
respect for you, but I don't have respect for what you're doing here tonight.
Mr. Vice President, I think you'll agree that your qualifications for president and what kind of leadership you would bring to the country, what kind of government you'd have, what kind of people you have around him is much more important than what you just referred to. I'd be happy to...
I want to be judged on the whole record.
Well,
and you're not
and I'm
giving
trying
me an
to set the record
opportunity.
straight.
You
Mr.
invited me to come here to talk about, I thought, the whole record.
I want you to talk about the record. You sat in a meeting with George Schultz.
Yes.
He got apoplectic when he found out that you and the President were being party of sending missiles to the Ayatollah of Iran. Can you explain how you were supposed to be you're an anti-terrorist expert. Iran was officially a terrorist state. You went around telling...
Explain that, Dan. I wanted those hostages.
Mr. Vice President, the question is...
out of there.
But you made us hypocrites in the face of the world. How could you sign on to such a policy?
Well,
and the question is, what does that tell us about your record?
Signed on to it. The same reason the President signed on to it. When a CIA agent is being tortured to death, maybe you err on the side of a human life. But everybody's admitted mistakes. I've admitted mistakes. And you want to dwell on them. And I want to talk about the values we believe in and the experience and the integrity that goes with all of this. And what's I'm going to do about education. And there's nothing new here. I thought this was a news program.
Well, I had hoped, Mr. Vice President, you would tell us to whom you expressed your reservations.
Yes, I did.
When you expressed them and what the reservations were.
Under oath.
What were the reservations?
Reservation about getting the control of an operation in the hands of a foreign power. Don Regan stated the other day, and I never heard a word of it on CBS, that the Vice President, in the presence of the President, spoke up about his concern about the whole cover of an operation being blown and secret in people that you're dealing with putting their lives in jeopardy.
And you weren't concerned about sending missiles to the Ayatollah Khomeini?
Every covert action. The President has explained that. The committee looked at that. And so there's nothing new on this.
Mr. Vice President, I appreciate you joining us tonight. I appreciate the straightforward way in which you engaged in this exchange. There are clearly some unanswered questions remain. Are you willing to go to a news conference before the Iowa caucuses, answer questions from all conferences
since March?
I gather that the answer is no. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Vice President. We'll be back with more news in a moment.
USA Today poll shows that 64% of Iowa Republicans think Rather was out of line during the interview. Only 18% said Rather was justified.
Now, a personal word, if I may. About last night's interview with George Bush, a few notes for those of you who have asked and for those of you who may have wondered but haven't actually asked. First, no, CBS News did not mislead the Vice President about the subject of the interview. We dealt extensively with his staff about our intentions, we dealt truthfully with them, and we stated our intentions publicly well before the interview. Secondly, I of course respect the office of the Vice Presidency, the institution, and the Vice President. Trying to ask honest questions and trying to be persistent about answers is part of a reporter's job. And however it may seem at any given time, the intention of even persistent questioning in a spirited interview is to do an honest, honorable job. The fact that more attention is sometimes given to the heat than the light is regrettable, but it goes with the territory. Now about the close. Ending live television interviews under time pressures sometimes isn't done as gracefully as we hope or intend, and last night was one of those times. Interviews such as the one last evening are in some ways uncomfortable for the questioner, for the subject, and for some viewers. We understand that and only hope for a mutual understanding that it is an essential part of our democratic process for choosing our presidents. Thanks. Now, back to the